Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder to yet another ship review. Today on the HMS Southampton, the 5.7 battle rating end of the line light cruiser for the British. And what should I say? The Brits are back in town with the town class. Sorry, I couldn't resist. And also a ship that delivers the DPM, is quite tanky, but it's not overpowered, it's not over the top. Yet when you have a fair understanding of the game mechanics in War Thunder and know how to command the ship, this ship will not let you down, and that is just quite how I like it. The town class itself has quite a good reputation when it comes to the World War II career, and about its historical career we now shall enjoy a slightly extended 5-minute guide by the ever awesome Drachinifel, linked to his awesome YouTube channel in the video description down below. So without further ado, here we go.
HMS Southampton was a town class cruiser of the Royal Navy. Oddly enough, she would give her name to the subclass that denotes the first 5 town class ships, even though her sister ship, HMS Newcastle, was laid down a month and a half before her, launched 2 months before, and commissioned a day before Southampton did, with Southampton commissioning on 6th of March 1937. As a member of the original town class, she was able to achieve 32 knots on 75,000 shaft horsepower and had a standard displacement of just over 9,000 tons, with a full load displacement of just over 11,000 tons. Her main armament consisted of 12 6-inch guns in 4 triple turrets, 2 forward and 2 aft in super-firing pairs. Anti-aircraft armament consisted of 8 4-inch guns in 4 twin mounts, 2 quadruple 40mm pom-pom guns, along with a handful of 3-pounder or 47mm guns, whose general purpose was mostly for saluting and training, but in a pinch could be used to fire at the occasional annoying aircraft or small boat. Torpedo armament was provided by 2 triple torpedo launchers, 1 per side. At the start of the war, she was assigned to the Home Fleet as flagship of 2nd Cruiser Squadron, and in company with her sister ship HMS Glasgow, she would patrol in an attempt to catch German freighters, blockade runners, and warships. During this time, she would successfully intercept the German freighter Johannes Molkenbuhr and participate in escort missions for damaged Royal Navy warships that were heading back to port, fighting off Luftwaffe attacks as she went. In the latter part of 1939, she would participate in several sweeping missions trying to find battleships of the Scharnhorst class, as they were known to be operating in the area, especially taking part with other town-class cruisers in sweeps looking for both Scharnhorsts after the loss of HMS Rawalpindi, an armed merchant cruiser. At the end of the year, she would be fitted with a Type 279 air search radar, and then it was back to the North Sea sweeping for German ships, before being used as a troop transport and escort for convoys heading for Norway in an attempt to stymie the German invasion. In this role, she was attacked by the U-boat U-38, but thanks to a torpedo malfunction, the Southampton did not sustain any damage. Along with the formation of other town-class cruisers and a flotilla of tribal-class destroyers, she was then ordered to evacuate many of the same troops that she'd brought to Norway as the German invasion of Norway took hold and an evacuation became necessary. She would come under attack by the Luftwaffe multiple times, with one of their attacks succeeding in scoring some damage, which forced her to return to port for repairs. After this, she was involved in anti-invasion patrols around the Thames estuary during the height of the scare about German invasion. As this scare died down as winter of 1940 set in, she was sent down to the Mediterranean along with a number of other town class, and while some of these would take part in Force H based out of Gibraltar, Southampton's destination was Alexandria at the other end of the Mediterranean. Doubling up the journey across the Mediterranean with convoy escort duty, she would be involved in the Battle of Cape Spartivento against the Italian Navy, before successfully escorting the merchant ships into Malta, then joining other ships for the passage across to Alexandria. Having actually arrived in Alexandria, she was almost immediately sent through the Suez Canal for a brief stint of operations in the Indian Ocean. However, the situation in the Mediterranean was deteriorating quickly with the appearance of German forces in addition to the Italian forces that the Royal Navy was already having to deal with. In part to remedy this situation and also to strengthen the defences of various islands and ports that the Royal Navy held, They launched Operation Excess, a series of supply convoys which was designed to reinforce Malta, as well as bring supplies to troops fighting in Greece, and bring supplies and men back to Alexandria to strengthen the Royal Navy presence there. The first few of her missions in this role were fairly successful. However, on the 11th of January 1941, as she was in company with her sister ship HMS Gloucester and 2 destroyers, she came under attack by Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers of the Luftwaffe near Malta. Despite the best efforts of her anti-aircraft gunners, the dive bombers managed to score 2 hits, which set her on fire. Although the fire was fairly substantial and the ship had lost power, it remained afloat and there was a small possibility of salvaging the ship. However, with continued air attacks from the Luftwaffe and the occasional Italian aircraft, it rapidly became clear that other ships remaining in the area to try and tow the Southampton would inevitably be hit themselves. And so, with as many survivors as possible being picked up by the Gloucester and the destroyer HMS Diamond, Southampton was torpedoed by her sister ship, Gloucester, and again by her sister ship HMS Orion, sending her to...
Let's now review the ship in War Thunder, and we begin with the side citadel protection. And this is very interesting since we have nearly from the stern over the middle of the ship, also nearly to the front, 114mm rolled cemented armor. That is not as good as rolled homogeneous armor, but it is thick enough to absorb all the HE shells and you just simply don't flood. I got hit severely by Kirovs, and even they, when hitting me in this area, didn't flood me. So this is a very, very good thing, and it just adds to the tankiness of the ship. And even when you angle it, that will bounce quite a few shots. But as you can see, there are some armor gaps. It is not like a pure box of citadel armor. In fact, we have here in the front the bulkheads of 63mm and here 65mm. And there is a big armor gap where there isn't even deck armor. The front citadel section has 32mm of armor, the middle ship as well, and the stern as well. So that now brings us to the barbettes of the turrets, and they are prominent targets, but compared to the rest of the size of the ship, not that huge. Obviously, they are all the same when it comes to the armor protection. Just the super firing turret has obviously more barbette to offer, and the side, and this is so far the only one that I can point this out, is thicker with 51mm than the front of the barbette, which only has 25.4mm. So that is not very thin. Every sort of AP shot goes through any sort of HE shell. Even sometimes from destroyer can knock out the barbette and therefore reduce the reload of your main guns. And talking about the main gun turrets, only 25.4mm. That is a severe drawback at one hand, that you have kind of the Kirov syndrome, kind of the syndrome from the Imperial Japanese Navy's heavy cruisers and some other ships, that you have very fragile turrets. But their hitting surface is not that huge, and you're not limited to 2 or 3 turrets. No, in fact, you have 4 turrets. So if you lose 1 turret, it's not the end of the world. And again, in conjunction with you not getting flooded all that much, you can concentrate on the repair and just can dish out the punishment. When we then continue to talk about the armor, there is a little bit of armor protection here for the 40mm and the secondaries, as well as the bridge, conning tower, and a little bit the side gallery, if you will. But that will not really save you, and the bridge is a prominent target, so you can lose on a regular basis control of the ship, but that is not really all that new to destroyer and cruiser captains alike. Now we go to the X-ray, or X-ray, whatever you want to call it, and we can see that the ammunition is half below the waterline and half above the waterline. Still, it is protected by the armor scheme completely, and that is certainly nice. So while you're safe from HE shells, from getting wrecked via an HE shell, even though Kirov can't do this, versus AP, it's debatable. And the same goes for the machinery that extends quite high above the waterline, but still is protected. Only the fuel tanks here and also here are not protected by deck armor, so that means even a destroyer can set you on fire with HE shells, sending them into this direction. So now let's talk about the armament, and we can see we have overall 4 triple turrets. The firing angles are forward and backwards not all that bad, but could be a touch better. Then we come to the secondaries, to the 102mm Mark 19 mountings, of which we have 4 double turrets, 2 per side, and they are here in the middle of the ship. They are a good protection versus patrol boats, versus other destroyers, at least non-American ones, and they can also be knocked out, and they also are double functioning as anti-aircraft guns with debatable success. What is undoubtedly awesome, but sadly we don't have enough of them, are 2 quadruple 40mm 2-pounder mountings. We have one here and here, and again, very good versus aircraft, very good versus patrol boat, and so much better than any sort of Japanese 25mm gun. Only, I guess, topped off here by the American 40mm Bofors mountings. Then we even have some heavy machine gun mountings, here and here, quadruple mountings, and then triple launchers per side of torpedoes. And that completes the armament of the ship. So it is all about the main guns, but unlike some other ships, you have some secondaries, you can somewhat defend yourself, and that is really bringing the ship into fitting the meta much more, unlike the Japanese heavy cruisers, as you can see in the background. So without further ado, now let's bring the ship into statistical perspective and let's compare it to the other 5.7 cruisers of the other nations. So when we compare the HMS Southampton C-83 1940 statistically to its contemporary battle rating adversaries, we can see that it's actually not looking all that bad. Especially the amount of guns, with 12, is only second to the USS Brooklyn, and we have the average caliber of 152mm, aka 6-inch. In fact, those 6-inch 50 BL Mark 23s are the very same as on the HMS Leander. However, we have 50% more, 12 instead of 8, and also the accuracy issues from the last patch on the HMS Leander has been fixed, so now those guns are actually quite enjoyable. And you have a whopping 2,400 rounds to fire from them with a nice 6.8 second reload, which is also pretty cool. Yes, it doesn't really match the USS Brooklyn or doesn't even come close to the HMS Tiger, but those are different ships by design, and the effective DPM with 105.9 rounds per minute for an ace crew compared to the other ace crew DPMs of other ships, well, it's only second again to the USS Brooklyn, kind of shadowing the Nürnberg, the Kirov and the Furutaka by quite a bit. And that is really, really nice. But again, the turrets are not armored like on the USS Brooklyn, so that can actually be reduced quite substantially, quite quickly. Now let's talk about the torpedoes, and at least we have torpedoes, and here with the torpedo mod we have 6 of those 533mm Mark 9 torpedoes with a maximum range of 12,350 meters or 12.3 kilometers with a rather slow speed of only 56 kilometers per hour. They are not even slightly comparable to the fantastic long lances, and they are more on the self-defensive side, but at least you have some which the HMS Tiger and the Brooklyn don't have, but they therefore have other strength. The displacement of the ship is kind of average, and the top speed is on the rather slow end of cruisers, but all the cruisers with the exception of the Kirov are all tightly packed together when it comes to the maximum speed between 58 and 61 kilometers per hour. But also the crew amount is not the highest. That means when your citadel gets breached and you lose crew in there, well, you lose the rest of your ship also relatively quickly. But as discussed beforehand, the citadel protection is actually pretty good, so that doesn't really happen all that much unless you run right into a Brooklyn or a Kirov or a Nürnberg that just AP you to death before you can do any sort of significant damage to them. The rather nice turret traverse and the amount of guns as well as the firing angles and your own AP can help you actually pretty nicely in this respect. But again, it's down to the commander to make the most out of this. So now let's have a look at the ammunition and let's see what all that DPM is worth. And let's begin with the stock 6-inch HE shells, and we can see that the stats are not really that promising. And in fact, we have a kind of an average mass velocity of 841 meters per second, and that is kind of average and not too bad. And the accuracy actually is not that awful as well, so you can reliably hit targets at long range. The TNT filler, with only 3.6 kilograms of loaded, which is 1-to-1 of TNT equivalent, puts this shell even below the German HE. Now that is kind of not great. And if you compare this also to the HMS Tiger, that has nearly twice the amount of TNT, the Brooklyn that gets up to 6 kilograms in a single shell, the Furutaka with 8, and then at the end the Kirov with 12.1 kilograms of TNT, you can see that the single shell on paper doesn't really do all that much damage. However, it kind of feels stronger, the accuracy lets you reliably hit the target, and so the sheer number of gun volume, or shell volume if you will, makes kind of up for it. And if you hit the destroyer, well, he doesn't really ask too many questions by which kind of 6-inch hit he got just blapped. And so versus destroyers it's perfectly fine. Versus cruisers you still can blap a lot of the lightly armored turrets, and you still deal severe damage, and again the DPM helps you quite a lot. The kinetic penetration is surprisingly high with 72 millimeters at 1000 meters, but the TNT blast penetration by itself with 37 millimeter falls quite significantly behind all the other cruisers except the Nürnberg that kind of shares this with you. Then we also have to look at the next shell, which is the 6-inch CPBC semi-armor piercing ballistic capped shell, and that is a tier 1 upgrade. Again, same mass velocity with 841 meters per second. Again, not really outstanding, but not really terrible. The TNT equivalent with 1.7 kilograms at first doesn't really look all that bad, especially in comparison to the German cruiser, the USS Brooklyn, and the HMS Tiger. However, the HMS Tiger has significantly better HE shells. The USS Brooklyn has a DPM that is significantly higher, and the Nürnberg, well, it kind of has a little bit better penetration. In fact, the penetration of those shells with only 203 millimeters is outright the worst, and that is not really all that great. So the AP is again not that good. Yet I found that it deals enough damage to the enemies, it's reliable, and you just blap enemy cruisers alike. You can easily penetrate their citadel, but not at any angle, at any range. So for the first time, I felt like I have to really aim for certain parts of a ship at medium range when the enemy cruiser was angled. And this now brings value to armor. But as we said, this ship also has some of the best armor currently in game, so I don't really mind. And that is actually a factor where I can kind of overlook the fact that this ship doesn't have any sort of higher penetrating armor piercing shell, doesn't have a better semi-armor piercing shell with more TNT like the Kirov, which has just stunning values with 7 kilograms, not 1.7, 7 kilograms for its 304mm penetrating semi-armor piercing round. So you better not get hit by this. And again, it shows that this ship is not really bad. It can compete with the enemies, but it's just not right there where the USS Brooklyn or the Kirov is. Yet it completely outclasses, in my experience, the Nürnberg, the Furutaka, and to a certain degree also the HMS Tiger. A trend that kind of I like, and where this ship just represents kind of the average desirable 5.7 ship, whereas then again Tiger, Brooklyn, and Kirov should be at a higher battle rating of 6.0. Well, with the HMS Tiger it's debatable. So in a nutshell, we have for this ship only 2 shell types. We have no flak shells for the main guns, we have no proximity fuse shells for this ship, we have no additional better in any way, shape or form armor piercing round, and we also don't have base use HE. Those 2 shell types are everything we got, and yet the handling is so good of the ship and the sheer DPM is so reliable as well as the accuracy and the still good damage output of those 6-inch guns, that I honestly don't mind, as you could see in the background. The ship is still satisfying to use, and it was significantly more fun than, for example, the IJN heavy cruisers, but at the same time I didn't feel like that dirty, like sitting in the Kirov at range or sitting in the Brooklyn, which are ships that shouldn't just simply be at this battle rating or from previous patches and still know how to absolutely rule the waves. So now let's talk about the gameplay, and let's just take one of the best shots ever. I see that there is a plane coming in trying to use the cover of the island as cover. I rangefind here with the main guns, but finally, get out of here. Well done. So in this battle you could see already what the ship could do, how good it performs versus any sort of adversary, destroyers, cruisers, and to a certain degree even planes. When we come quickly back to the secondaries, as I said, those 4-inch guns, they also have obviously an HE shell, and it's set as high explosive fragmentation shell, self-destroying. That's not really a flux shell. Sometimes it behaves like this, sometimes not. I think Gaijin has to work on this. But for the 4-inch gun we also have a semi-armor piercing shell, which makes engaging American destroyers as well possible, going through their anti-fragmentation armor. Talking about American destroyers, we just killed a Farragut, and yes, many bots were killed in this battle, and the match is about to end. So sadly I cannot really deal here with this K2. With a few more seconds to go would be a safe additional kill. He can't really deal damage to us since he is bound to have only HE. And the last salvo here on this American Sumner, I'm not quite sure. Well, it will not really reach its targets before the match ends. And we got 1 plane and 11 kills. We only not just got the Survivor Award, but also the Mission Maker. And that is one hell of a award. So 15,000 civil lines are coming only from those 2 awards, making a quarter of our total civil line income, 58,000 civil lines and 4,390 modification research points. What a nice battle. The ship is certainly fun. I think the Royal Navy is back in town with the town class. I still couldn't resist that joke. First place on the team with 3,666 score points without a death. What a nice result. And again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the 5-minute guide by Drachinifel. Again, link to his YouTube channel in the video description down below. So I hope you give this video a like if you did. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know in the comment section what you think about those ship reviews. And as usual, we'll see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.